Late one night, a young girl named Manhwa was traveling to an unfamiliar city where she could find a decent job at a famous university for rich students. Along with the girl, the main character named Jo was also traveling. The man was constantly reading a magazine and behaved very suspiciously. Also, the driver of the car looked like a bandit. Manhwa started to feel very nervous. She was afraid that both men were accomplices who wanted to kidnap the young girl. Suddenly, Manhwa heard a loud pop and the driver of the car reported that the car had a flat tire. A man who looked like a bandit stopped outside a small house with someone inside. The driver asked the passengers to sit quietly in the car while he found a replacement for the damaged tire. Manhwa really wanted to get home as soon as possible and dared to ask the man how long it would take. At that moment, a group of dangerous bandits appear from a small ruined house and start threatening the beautiful girl. Manhwa snatches her phone to quickly contact the police, but one of the bandits grabs the girl's hands, at which point the mobile device falls to the ground. It turns out that the bandits were purposely following the girl as they knew she was working at a famous university. The criminals decide to abuse the beautiful girl first and then take all the money from her. Manhwa panics and starts screaming. At this moment, the protagonist gets out of the car and taunts the bandits. He condemns the criminals for attacking a defenseless girl. After the young lad's bold words, one of the detractors threw a knife at Jo. Suddenly to everyone, the protagonist caught the knife with his bare hands and broke it into 2 pieces. The criminals become bewildered and start to panic. At that moment, the strongest bandit scoffs at the man's shenanigans. The big guy is heading towards the guy with a heavy pipe in his hands. Suddenly, the bandit attacks Jo, but the protagonist throws the giant aside with one blow. Manhwa and the outlaws were shocked by the young lad's abilities. After the controlling blow, Jo looks towards the bandits, who were bewildered. At this moment, all the criminals were frightened by the fearless man and hurriedly fled away. After a while, the protagonist manages to repair the bandit's car and drive it to the nearest town. It turns out that the young guy has recently returned from abroad. Finally, the couple gets acquainted and learns each other's names. The girl tells him that she works at a prestigious university. At this point, Jo is perplexed because he thinks that only older people can work in educational institutions. The guy asks Manhwa's age in surprise. Suddenly, the guy, without waiting for an answer, states that the girl is probably over 40 years old. After these words, Manhwa goes into a rage and becomes very angry with the protagonist. The girl starts beating the man for his disrespectful attitude. After a while, the man brings Manhwa to the university and leaves her there. The girl thanks the guy for his help and offers to meet again. At this point, the protagonist admits that he never wants to meet such an evil girl again. After these words, Jo quickly drives away in a stolen car, and the girl continues to shout insults at the protagonist. Upon arriving home, a young man accidentally fell asleep at the wheel of the car and crashed into a pole. The protagonist was unfazed and calmly took his luggage from the trunk of the car and headed for his huge mansion. It turns out that his high-rise house has been empty for about 7 years. Jo realized that he would have to clean the big house alone. At that moment, a brilliant idea popped into the man's head. Jo decided to find a tenant and rent him a room, so that he, while renting the room, would help clean and cheer up the main character. After a while, the man wrote an ad. It said that beautiful girls were given a 50% discount. The next morning, Jo woke up to a sudden knock on the front door. The protagonist had no time to put on his clothes and went to open the door. It turns out that a very beautiful girl came to the man on the ad. Jo scrutinizes the perfect body of the girl named Fei and evaluates her beauty. Suddenly, the protagonist's nose starts to bleed from the intense excitement. After that, the man gladly provides a free room for the girl. The couple decides to discuss the cost of renting a room. Jo continues to stare at the main character's body and enjoy her incomparable beauty. The girl becomes embarrassed by the man's gaze and wants to get out of there. At this moment, the guy tells her that there is an outdoor swimming pool on the territory of a huge house. It is because of this that the girl decides to stay. The protagonist already imagines how On will be carefree relaxing in the pool and sunbathing in the sun. Ching-jo shows the girl the pool in the backyard of the mansion. Xiaofei gets excited by what she sees, but it turns out that the girl has very little money because her wallet, which contained a large amount of cash, was recently stolen. The protagonist gets too close to Ching-jo and the man becomes aroused again. This is what makes the protagonist agree to the terms of the beautiful and lovely girl and reduce the amount of payment for renting the room. The next day, Xiaofei discovers that there is no money left in her bank account at all after renting a house. She decides to find a job as soon as possible to support herself. In the evening of the same day, Xiaofei returns home. Ching-jo has already prepared a delicious dinner and invited the girl to taste his dish. At first, the protagonist refuses because she is very tired from the previous day, but the man manages to persuade her. Ching-jo wondered about Xiaofei's life. The girl says that she has been trying to find a suitable job all day, but unfortunately, due to her lack of experience or lack of education, the protagonist was unable to find a part-time job. Ching-jo states that the girl will have to suffer for a while and only then will she be able to live a prosperous life. Xiaofei realizes that the guy is very cruel and cold-blooded. The moment the young girl tasted Ching-jo's dish, she was very surprised because the food was very delicious. Xiaofei starts complimenting the rich man, and at that moment, the guy claims that he plans to open a restaurant in this city. The protagonist invites Xiaofei to work for him so that he can admire the girl's beauty all the time. At this time, the leader of the criminal group named Lu tries to find information about the protagonist. The elderly man manages to find out that Ching-jo has recently arrived from abroad and immediately started living with a young and beautiful girl. Unfortunately for Lu, his subordinates are unable to find out information about Xiaofei because it requires individual authority. Lu starts to panic and suspects that the couple wants to occupy important points in the city, but his subordinates tell him that the protagonists have opened a new restaurant and are making money in an honest way. At this time, Ching-jo thoughtlessly bought a suitable building in which he opened his own restaurant. The man decided to name it Yangqi-lan. Xiaofei is perplexed when she realizes that the young man did not hesitate to give 500,000 to buy the building. The girl is greatly surprised by the injustice of social stratification. At that moment, suddenly, a courier brings a secret parcel containing golden Chinese good luck cats. Ching-jong reads the letter congratulating him on the opening of a beautiful new restaurant. It turns out that the gift parcel was sent by the elderly criminal leader Lu. The protagonist asks Xiaofei to put the precious souvenirs in full view of the visitors. The girl was astonished by the man's indifference to such expensive things, but still obeyed Ching-jo and put the lucky cats in the antechamber room. Suddenly, visitors started coming to the new restaurant. Everyone in town was interested in the new restaurant and the wonderful chef, who was able to cook delicious dishes from different countries. The heroes worked until late in the evening. The main character was ecstatic that his new restaurant was bringing in a lot of money. At this time, Xiaofei was very exhausted. At this moment, Ching-jo suddenly slaps the girl's butt, and the protagonist goes into a rage and wants to hit him. But the man stops her and gives her money for the work done. Xiaofei was surprised by the decent salary and sincerely thanked her boss. At this moment, the girl immediately forgot about the impudent man's prank. In the evening of the same day, the protagonist was having fun in the outdoor swimming pool, which was in the backyard of a huge house. A young and beautiful girl invites Ching-jo to swim together. The protagonist immediately agrees and hurries to finish his drink to quickly go down to the girl. At this time, Xiaofei thinks about the man's true character, and at this moment, the power goes out in the whole house. Ching-jo begins to suspect that he and his new girlfriend are in danger. The protagonist panics because she is very afraid of the dark. A beautiful girl asks her boss to find out what happened to the electricity and fix the problem as soon as possible. The man claims that there was a short circuit due to a heavy load of electricity. He promises that he will soon solve the problem and get back to the girl. Ching-jo goes to inspect the area. The protagonist suspects that someone has snuck into the territory of the mansion and wants to kill him. After a few seconds, the guy manages to find a man in a black suit who was armed with a long dagger. Ching-jo bypasses the hired thug and, suddenly to the detractor, lights a cigarette. At that moment, the criminal turns around and realizes that she has been exposed. A young and rich guy tries to find out from the girl why she infiltrated the main character's territory. At that moment, the girl quickly runs away from the man to hide from him. Ching-jo is perplexed and realizes that the bandit is a professional hitman who has come to kill the powerful protagonist. The man begins to analyze what happened and realizes that the people who want to kill him know about the young guy's fighting abilities. From this, Ching-jo concludes that the powerful gangsters would not hire one person to eliminate Ching-jo, which means that the hitman was hired to kill Xiaofei. At that moment, the criminal attacks from behind and tries to kill the protagonist. Suddenly the man does a backflip, deftly dodging the attack of the armed enemy. The killer hesitated for a moment and distracted. At this point, the protagonist manages to deliver several critical blows to the killer and neutralize him. Ching-jo takes the dagger from the criminal and starts threatening the girl with death if she doesn't tell about her true customer. The murderer admits defeat and is ready to accept death. The stranger declares that under no circumstances will not reveal the identity of the dangerous customer. After these decisive words, the protagonist decides to put out the cigarette on the forehead of the killer. But even after this, the girl does not confess and suddenly finds the strength to make a decisive leap and try to escape, but she fails. At this time, Xiaofei hears strange sounds and tries to call out to her new friend. Ching-jo tells the protagonist that he has not yet fixed the problem that caused the power to go out. The man starts to make excuses and claims that it is very dark outside. In fact, the protagonist continues to interrogate a professional hitman. Ching-jo learns that the hitman belongs to a group called Shadows. The man also notes that the hitman belongs to the gold rank. The protagonist tells the criminal that he returned to China because he does not want to harm other people in another country. In addition, Ching-jo claims that any mercenary will not be able to kill him because he has learned many martial arts that he uses effectively in battle. In the end, the young guy kills the hitman and quickly disposes of the corpse with the help of chemical drugs. At this point, Xiaofei could not calm down and tried to inquire about the situation from the protagonist. The man said that he had to go to his neighbor's house and there he learned that the electricity had been cut off throughout the entire neighborhood. After these words, Xiaofei starts crying. The girl claims that without light, she can't find the path that leads to the house. The main character asks the protagonist to pick her up so she can get to her room. At this point, the man decides to help his friend gratuitously and goes to her aid. When the protagonist managed to find the girl, the man took her by the shoulder. At that moment, Xiaofei was very frightened and climbed into the man's arms. At this moment, the guy was very happy because he was in the arms of a very beautiful girl. The protagonist refuses to let go of Ching-jo and asks him to carry her home. Without a second thought, the guy agrees and is very happy about what happened. The next day, the couple is again spending time at work in the restaurant. Suddenly, the protagonist hears that a fight has broken out in the room where all the customers are sitting. Xiaofei tries to stop the intruders and threatens to call the police. It turned out that a group of bullies started to show their strength. When the main characters went to the restaurant hall to stop the fight, a bully named Dalongli noticed a very beautiful Xiaofei. The concerned man started flirting with the main character, but the girl keeps threatening that she will call law enforcement. Dalongli becomes enraged and wants to hit the defenseless and fragile girl. At that moment, Ching-jo comes to the protagonist's defense. He disarms the big man with a single blow and demonstrates his physical abilities once again. A group of bandits, after seeing this, did not retreat and decided to attack the protagonist with the whole crowd. When Dalongli regains consciousness, all his friends have been defeated. Ching-jo starts cursing at the criminals and tells them never to touch Xiaofei again because the girl is the protagonist's potential fiancée. All the customers and restaurant staff were delighted with the young man's abilities and were also happy that the man protected everyone from the bullies. After a while, Ching Zhou goes outside and meets Dalongli again. The leader of the criminal gang says he called the police because the restaurant owner attacked him and his friends. When the law enforcement officers arrived, Dalongli started calling out for his brother and afterwards asking the policeman to punish him. Suddenly, a very beautiful female law enforcement officer comes out of the police car and informs him that the fat bully is her cousin.